It's now time to bring you the part 2 of our interview segment as we focus on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, Nigeria's state of preparedness to take advantage of this. Now, the role of export as a cardinal source of foreign exchange to the Nigerian economy cannot be overemphasized. Now, with the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, Nigeria's export market will serve as a massive opportunity to boost the agricultural produce in country as well as sale of raw unprocessed commodity. As Nigeria contributes an estimate of about 76% of total trading volume in the ECOWAS region, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will help Nigerian manufacturers gain access to a wider market with a population of well over 1.2 billion people and a market worth of about 2.6 trillion naira, that's combined GDP, hereby also expanding the operations to other markets, as this would also give rise to increased investment in the distribution and logistics supply chain. With the numerous benefits of AfCFTA and the second wave of the COVID-19 still having ripple effect on economic activities across the continent, the big question now is how far can this hamper cross-border trading amongst other African countries? Joining me now live in our Lagos studio to proffer some answers to this big burning question and many more, I have with me export analyst Mr. John Isamede. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Now, we have quite a big opportunity, but our state of preparedness to meet our potential and the opportunity at hand is the biggest question that we have to deal with. How prepared so far? This is the first quarter of the year 2021 gone with the mind of preparing our state of our best foot forward for the taking part of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, now quarter 2. Are you impressed at all with what government has done so far in boosting the manufacturing sector irrespective of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you very much. COVID is not restricted to one country. Countries are prepared, and we have to look at our own level of preparedness. It's not that we should be importing virtually everything into this country, which invariably has a negative impact on our foreign reserves, so also the exchange rate, the pressure on the naira is too much. So when you now talk of opportunities and all that, let us now look at where we stand as a nation. Lamentation is over. Follow the Africa Continental Free Trade right from 1958. Right from the day Ghana got independent in 1957, the African Union in 1963, when it was signed. At that time, there were lamentations, reasons why we were the last to sign and all that. But let us put that behind us because some of us are experts. I cannot go to Ghana, go to South Africa, go to UK and America and say Nigeria cannot. It's a debt on our own part because I claim to be an expert. So let us be very honest with ourselves. The first question we should ask when you look at our level of preparedness, our own culture is culture of importation. That is why import is on a single window. As I'm talking to you, Nigeria does not have one single vessel, and the port is not configured to handle export. So I'm not here today to look at the negative aspect of it, not to discourage people. I am here today to tell people there is hope. Because if you look at the books there, for the past 1 or 2 years, I've been working on using the template we use on the ECOWAS ETLS you have given for us now to develop how to move to the next level of African Continental Free Trade. Before we talk of whether it's benefit or not, let us first of all look at our environment. In a country like Nigeria of about 206 million people, we cannot boast of 5 export managers. And I look at it as a challenge. What I am doing now is that the books and everything I have prepared is on mentoring and hand-holding. Because when you talk of export, it's not only farmers. When you talk of export, it's not only petroleum. And it's not only the solid mineral, even services. Now we talk of diaspora. We talk of the ambassadors. Because if you look at the export value chain, the ambassadors, they have to take the last leg. So how many of these markets have we developed? You don't just jump into a market. It's not everybody that can fly an aeroplane. Otherwise, you'll be flying blind.
How aggressive are we supposed to be promoting all this hand-holding process for our local manufacturers across the key value chains when we still have production volume challenges, we still have issues around standardization and then logistic supply chains? These are still real.
Standardization is not an issue. It is the buyer that determines what he wants. It is not the seller. That is why we are failing. Before you embark on export, the first thing you do is to send sample. And you must have an analysis. It's not the buyer telling you that you have to tell the buyer this is what I have to offer. Then they will reply you back. The first thing is that when I'm talking of this mentoring or handholding, I've developed three templates. One is, if you look at your foreign policy, you look at your trade policy. Every agreement has to go to National Assembly for approval, looking at Section 3 of the Nigerian Constitution. The National Assembly has a role, oversight function. This is when you are talking of production, you are talking of petroleum and all that. The National Assembly has a big role now because it's no longer the government. It's the battle of looking for markets and all that is now between the National Assembly and the organized private sector. The first thing, Nigeria as a country, we have 4 countries bordering us. Even when you talk of ECOWAS, you talk of it, the first thing, in international marketing you think of is what you call the centric, the low-hanging fruit, your neighbors. What are we discussing with Cameroon? We share a boundary of 1,670 kilometers from Lake Chad to Bakassi. Then Borno State have boundary with 3 countries, Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. From there to Niger Republic, you are talking of 1,500 kilometers. Now we are talking of extending our railway lines into Maradi. Maradi to Jibia is only 40 kilometers. Jibia to Katsina is 50 kilometers. Katsina to Kano is 175 kilometers. So people who are talking, the government has a plan of extending this. That is what you are discussing with Niger. But the other thing is that with Benin Republic, you have a boundary of 773 kilometers. And what are we talking? When you now talk of centric marketing, because there are certain things we should be discussing with Benin Republic, we'll be discussing with Niger, we'll be discussing with Cameroon and Chad, even outside the ECOWAS agreement. This is why when the border was closed for over a year, some of us were crying, because Nigeria does not have the latitude to close border. Border is an international issue. The type of border we maintain with our neighbor are just simple border, not a hard border, not a militarized or demilitarized border. So the second level of this thing is the ECOWAS. You painted it. We all started the whole thing because ECOWAS, ETLS, we negotiated it for a period of 3 or 4 years. That was the time of General Ibrahim Babangida, and we said for us to sign, what are you going to do? It's not just a matter of doing business, because CBN is there waiting for you. We must have a payment system. That was how some new generation banks came up. And we came up with the issue of certificate of origin. How do you differentiate yam from Ghana from that of Nigeria? There must be certificate of origin. Even beer you produce in this country or minerals you produce in this country is not different from what you have in other, because these are multinational companies. What you have in West Africa are just subsidiary. So when you talk of ECOWAS trade, you are the picture they painted is that genuine ECOWAS trade is only 5%. A population of close to 400 million people. Nigeria controls about 60% of the population. We control 60% of the resources or the market. Looking at the Francophone gang up, they came up with the issue of a single currency, where we have a central bank. Benin Republic does not have a central bank. We went into an agreement because there are 5 levels of integration: free trade area, preferential trade area. We signed the CET. Nigeria argued about the 5 ban. You negotiate. You have to negotiate your own tariff.
Mr. Osemede, let me button here now. Right. Talking about negotiations, trade negotiations, now with the categorization of export and how to put your best foot forward now, what is your expectation of the AfCFTA committees across board? Because each country has their representatives. What do you expect for Nigeria to bring to the table now?
What we have seen over the years is that departments, government department, the OPS will be operating in silos. But the government have a team. So also we have the action committee. The only thing we have not seen with the action committee is there must be an MIE. Now what we are saying is that the government have signed. We have no reason. Whether Ghana has taken the first shot or the first container, we are all like students in the same class. At the end of the day, we are going to take the same exam and have the same scorecard. What we agreed under the Africa Continental Free Trade is the Africa Single Market Agenda 2063.
Exactly.
And all that is FTA, Free Trade Area. It's not a custom union. When you say custom union, that is FTA plus CET. We are not running that. It's just a free trade. out of it, 90% of your tariff is you have to satisfy. And every country has every right. That is why we have trade negotiation office. You negotiate your own tariff in line with your own custom arrangement, in line with what we saw under the CET. Because the CET, some were saying 3 ban. Nigeria argue because we control the population, the resources, and everything in West Africa, and we argue for 5. Under the ECOWAS CET, we have 0%, we have 5%, we have 10%, we have 20%. Nigeria argued because that was when they closed border. They were saying that Nigeria, they are smuggling things into Nigeria. The first question I asked, have you looked at the other side of the border? The shared border that is leaving this country to Niger Republic, the yam in Ghana, is it from which farm in Ghana? From Nigeria. So when you talk of tariff and all that, you negotiate. You don't close border, you don't use ban. Like some of the mistakes we are seeing from government officials, you are banning 45 items. When you have signed the ECOWAS ETLS, you have signed the WTO, and we all know what trade facilitation. Because what you use your tariff. You don't use the word ban, B-A-N, you use the word ban, B-A-N-D. The first ban is 0%, no processed good. Then you can talk of 10% of semi-processed, and the final one to protect your own industry.
So instead of a ban, the language of a ban, you said impose tariffs. That's
impose tariffs, yes. Because even the Africa Continental, it's not that we are going to run 0 tariff the first day. Because now we have not even seen a copy of the certificate of origin to say these are goods coming from Nigeria. That will not debar us. We are not crying because some of us are experts. And if we work together as a family, along that with stakeholders, we will get there. But now that we are operating in silos, that the government officials have finished their assignments, it is now for the National Assembly and the organized private sector, because they are the business people.
How much of a big concern is this for you now, competitive pricing for our local manufacturing base, and then the agenda of cost-cutting measures? Because if we're going to be working in regions and not as silos at this point in time, and then we have open markets, pricing is key.
It's key.
How do we address this?
I can give you 100 ways of organized export pricing, because it's not 100% of what you produce in Nigeria that you use for export. There are things you import
in country, and
and there are things, there's what we call under prohibition, but you can bring things into the EPZ, because the essence of General Ibrahim Baganga looking at the decree setting up this in Calabar and all that with 2 now and 47 is to promote export, not for the local market. So when you are talking of petroleum, I don't want to go into all that because of the time. When you are talking of costing, there are about 100 ways of doing costing, but you can summarize that to 3. Penetration pricing policy, the going concern, what others are giving, and a leader price. The first thing we look at, the cost of production in this country, because your cost determines your final offer. If you look at petroleum, the price of petroleum, they said we are the cheapest in West Africa. But if you go to other places, transportation in their neighboring country is cheaper than what you experience here. Electricity is much more stable. The number of checkpoints you have, even when the border is closed, how many checkpoints do you have from here to the border? Go and see what is happening in Apapa. 2 weeks ago, some of us cried out. How do you close border for exporters? Who pays the demurrage, the delay? What of the deterioration? Because in international trade, there are 2 things you look at. Because international trade is like a coin, head or tail, import and export. In import, you can adjust price. You bring things into Nigeria, 2-3 days or 1 month in a proper port, you bring the goods out, you put your margin. If you have that monopoly or not, you can still sell because you are not producing locally. What of export? What are we producing here? And what value are we adding that you cannot get from our neighboring countries? So if you now close the border for 1 year, what of the suffocation? You can see the report on the exchange rate at which the dollar is going up. Even when the price of oil, which has affected foodstuff, because what we say in ECOWAS is free movement of goods and services.
At state,
so the last one, what of the level of saturation? How many companies today are producing 100% capacity? You are producing at 30%, you have to share the two. So we are not still competitive. This is why we need incentive. And government now has answered by providing 50 billion as post-COVID to stimulate production. So another 5 billion for export development fund. As I'm talking to you now, those who are promoting export are going around this country, regardless of your class, whether you're a farmer and all that. Because if you go to Igbo market, you go to Kari market and all that, you see people selling vegetable and all that. And if you go to the departmental store, you see imports or some of this agricultural produce. It's not done by those women, but it's done because there's a chain already developed.
Let's talk about incentives a little further now. At state level, sub-national level, what's your expectation on the part of state governments now? The agenda of one state, one product, that campaign does not necessarily resound or exude any sort of winning capacity to the best of my knowledge at this point in time. And we cannot say we are putting our best foot forward if we cannot still work as individual units and then come together as a collective front.
Thank you very much.
Value addition. How are we supposed to deal with these issues when we don't have state governments that are ready?
When you talk of government or governance, there are 3 levels. The federal, the state, and the local government. There is no cocoa plantation in Abuja. In the First Republic, the Western region was one of the richest regions in the world. And prior to that, 51% of the GDP was from agriculture. Today, everything is left for the federal government. That the federal government, we have to look for market for you, give you all the incentives. All right, why some of these incentives are not working is that a man in Delta State and the other one in Kogi State, Maiduguri, Borno State, has the same incentive. Because incentive should come from the local government. We have seen this in Ghana. We have seen it in Ivory Coast. And we have seen what the tea farmers and all that are doing in Kenya. So, but here in Nigeria, when you attend trade mission, trade fair and all that, what you see imported goods, and those who are coming are those who have no business in business. And the only question they ask is that, how can I do it? And when we now tell them that it takes you at least 2 years to study what export is, to study, not to export. Because it takes 7 years to read medicine. It takes 5 years to read engineering. You did not just jump from the main road and here and begin to interview me. The truth of the matter is, an average Nigerian is always in a hurry to do business. When you tell them, do this, that is why you have a lot of rejections. Because what we are trying to avoid now is that let us now have a chain of how to run this business. And if there's rejection, we know who is responsible for that rejection. And Nigeria should not, even packaging, costing and all that is very important. Because people go to the market, they don't know what Incoterm is all about. That if I give you a price from what I say in the Igbo market, it's enough to carry the goods to America. They don't know that you have to pay handling charges, you have to transport it. Then there's export procedure and documentation and all that. So we still have a long way. That is why we are coming up. The day of lamentation is over. It's now hand-holding, mentoring. That we now begin to identify who is who. And if there's problem, it's not to go and castigate and run such a person down. You bring it back to track. Because whatever he's doing affects all Nigerians. Because your mistake can rub on my own business.
Do you think our seaports have the capacity to deal with the volume that we can actually churn out as a country? And now I talk about this with the agenda of automation brought to the fore. We're still dealing with issues whereby we have poor call-up system. We still have issues around bill of lading. We are still having issues around port procedures and systems that are just unnecessarily clogged.
Thank you very much. Are we prepared to develop? Let's make sure that when you interview the Mr. Elemo, you were talking about Suez Canal. I've been to Suez Canal before. The place has been on for the past 100 years. Measure all the ports. The best ports in Africa, you'll be talking of Port of Namibia. You'll be talking of Port of Durban and Port of Mombasa. All these have done run. The truth of the matter is that what is the size of the port in Benin Republic is not up to 2 kilometers. From Hotel du Port to this junction by ARTB. It's not up to the half. It's not up to half of the port of Apapa. But what of the equipment? Have you been to the port of Antwerp? When you see containers moving? So the issue is that if we have the equipment, export is not only single window. Import is only single window. As I'm sitting down with you Through your telephone, you can call Stuttgart. I need a Mercedes-Benz. Call a bank. Money is debited. This evening, Lufthansa will bring the car. But is that export is still only a piece of paper? That was how we ran into problem with export incentive. Because by the time the custom long room is still very long for exporters. The painful aspect of it is that you have military school training soldiers. You have ASCON. You have CMD here training civil servants and all that. Who is training the Nigerian investor? Because we were made based on the British colonial arrangement that we should be importers. And they determine the price for whatever they take the goods, they know what to do and all that, and give it back to us 100 times. The issue of port congestion and all that should be things we'll be discussing 50 years back. Because we go to other countries. Have you been to Singapore, where a whole container is cleared?
Hitch-free.
Hitch-free for within 6 hours. Here, they are vessels who have been there for the past 24 months. Most of the big companies, the big names I don't want to mention, they are using volume.
Aren't you tired of this blame game?
They are people who are responsible in this country who is prepared to resign. Who is giving targets? Because this is a country where people are not giving targets. Which MDA has target in Nigeria? Even some will leave their own job, dabble into others. A lot of MDAs are not running on their lanes.
But permit me to button now. We have the Customs Service have its target, and they make mention of that, where they have wins and then deficits and then the amount of volume that was recorded. So they
Thank you. In 1990, Custom was moved from Ministry of Trade and Investment into Finance. And the target that was given to Custom was on importation. What is the target of exporting? What is the target of Custom in the export arena? Because when you talk of balance of trade, balance of payment, you have to match import with export. So if Custom is talking of target, it's only on one side. That is why export is still suffering. And the private sector, they are not happy matters. So this is the time now that we have to balance up. We are talking of Africa continental free trade. Free trade does not mean the free. There's no free trade anywhere in the world because there's documentation. Even WTO, your trade policy and everything has to be approved by the WTO.
Okay, Mr. Isemide, it's been a pleasure speaking with you so far, Mr. John Isemide, and hopefully government takes cues from all of these. And even if we have the COVID-19 pandemic still in place, that's not enough of an excuse to say that we have an economy that is strangulated and not making the best of the opportunities on ground. Thank you very much for your time today.